In the last class, we saw primarily two slokas, and out of which one sloka we went in depth. Before we saw the sloka 11, we also tried to understand the summary of verses in chapter 2 from 1 to 18, where Arjuna coming down from his adamancy, and then Krishna starts his Bhagavad Gita. We try to understand what is Guru, and Guru is not someone we are going to go in search of. It is something that happens in our life. And as a student, it is our responsibility to listen to our Guru, not to challenge the knowledge of the Guru, but ask as many questions to your Guru just to make sure that you get a clarity on the subject rather than challenging the very knowledge of the Guru. So, student means one who surrenders to his Guru with a very clear knowledge that my Guru knows what is good for me, and let me listen to my Guru and let me follow my Guru. And that is what we saw, and Arjuna turning into a good student, and Krishna was waiting for this to happen. He starts his Bhagavad Gita. What we saw in we also tried to understand in the last class that Bhagavad Gita is a teaching of Lord Krishna. There is nothing like a preaching or advising. Why? Because we also saw in the last class that advice is a temporary solution which may take care of the problem at that moment, but will never become a remedy for it. But teaching is one thing which not only becomes a remedy for the problem, but it also makes the student independent, and he can handle himself in forthcoming situations rather than always depending upon the Guru. But when it is an advice, you need to go for the advisor every time you are into a problem. So these are the advantages of teaching, and that's what we understand, that in Bhagavad Gita these are the teachings of Lord Krishna and not preaching or advisor from Lord Krishna. So when we say teaching, then we should understand that when you are ready for the teaching, your readiness is exhibited in the form of your clarity in mind as a student. So with all these understanding, we got into sloka 11. As I told you in verse number sloka 11, it's the first sloka of the teaching, and as I told you, it itself, the first ball itself was a sixer from Lord Krishna. So what he was saying in sloka verse number 11 is that Arjuna, you are grieving for that which doesn't deserve grief. And second, a wise man like you will never grieve for anything, neither for the living one nor for the dead. So here Krishna takes to the level of someone who is dead, and we understood in the last class that death is something that is what leads to ultimate grief for anyone. But when we really sit and think, we can understand that it is not the death of anyone that brings the grief in me. It is the death of my kin and kith only brings that grief to me. So we also can understand that it is not the death that is the cause of my grief. It is my presence there, my involvement there, my being there is the cause for the death. Because as we see that it is the death of my kith and kin that is responsible for my grief. So when I say kith and kin, I am in them, I am present in them. That's what we mean by kith and kin. When I say my father, my mother, I place myself there. That is why anything that is happening to them brings the grief. So Krishna goes to the level of death. Why? Because that is the one universally we feel that everyone grieves for. When it comes to money, or when it comes to education, when it comes to health, it is not that universally everyone grieves for this. But death is one thing that universally everyone grieves. Even when you look into that common aspect, death, for which is the cause of the grief, we will understand that we don't grieve for everyone's death. So when I place myself there, the grief comes there. So the cause is not what is happening to others. The cause is I putting myself there, and seeing me there as a part of it is the cause for the death. So Krishna tells Arjuna, don't grieve for something that which doesn't deserve grief, means death doesn't deserve grief at all. grief at all. Well, we will see this in the coming slokas, why it is so. And wise men like you. So we will also try to understand what is a wise man. Will never grieve for the living as well as for the dead. And why did he mention wise men like you? Because Arjuna, if you remember, right from the chapter 1 till almost verse number 8 in chapter 2, you were acting like a wise man. You gave all the reasons. Why do you grieve for? Which means you know why do you grieve for. But if you know and if you are a wise man, you will never grieve. So he also subtly tells Arjuna, don't think that you are a wise man. You are a fool. Why? You are grieving. For what? Which doesn't deserve to be grieved at all. So that's a beautiful way. And we see this, it is the self-knowledge that is responsible to come out of this grief. As well as that ignorance is there, self-ignorance is there, grief is going to be there. And that's what the complete essence of Bhagavad Gita is going to be. The self-knowledge. And at any point of time, we never admit that our ignorance is responsible for our grief. So that itself is a big self-ignorance. So actions are not going to get us out from grief. The knowledge alone is going to get us out of this grief. And that knowledge is what we are going to get in the coming verses. And continuing in verse number 12, which we just started, because it needs a little bit more background information to understand verse number 12. So in verse number 12, Lord Krishna says, which is what we are going to go in depth in this class. Lord Krishna says, even in the past, it was not that I was not there. Same is with you, Arjuna, and with the others here. Even in the future, it is not that we will not be there. So there are two negatives you see in the first sentence. Krishna says, Arjuna, it is in the past. In the past, it was not that I was not there. So there are two not. It is not that I was not there. You can also say not as a naughtiness of Lord Krishna also, or maybe looks confusing from the outside, but the very essence of making two negatives is to emphasize. Like the teacher says, if you don't come with the book, don't come to the class tomorrow. Which means what? You can come to the class only if you are with the book. That means the teacher emphasizes the student, if you don't come with the book, don't come to the class tomorrow. So there are two negatives. Similarly, Krishna says, it is not that I was not there earlier. Which means what? I was there. You were also there, Arjuna. All the others you are seeing in front of you were also there earlier. And Krishna continues, even in future, it is not that I will not be there or we will not be there, which means what? We will continue to be there in the future also. So how can we understand this? What is it Krishna is referring to? That I was there earlier also, you were also there earlier, others were also there earlier, and in future also we are going to be there. So what is that Krishna is trying to say? What is that he is referring to, that I hear or we hear? That's something that we need to understand here. So for this, first we need to understand our body is divided into three parts or segmentized into three. One is the gross body. We call that as a Sthula Sariram. And second one is the subtle body, which is Sukshma Sariram. And the third one is the causal body, which is the Karana Sariram. So gross body, that is the Sukshma Sthula Sariram, which is what we see now. The external aspect, the body as such, is a gross body. And next one is the Sukshma Sariram, the subtle body, which is referred to as our mind. It is subtle. It is there, but it is subtle, which is not seen, which is not visible, which is available for experience and knowledge. And the third one, the causal body, which is the Karana Sariram, which is that responsible for our birth. That all that we are going to experience in this birth, that which is responsible for that is called the causal body or Karana Sariram. So now Krishna refers that we were not, it is not that I was not there earlier, nor you. Similarly, in future also it is not that we will not be there. So what is it Krishna refers to I here is the gross body. As well as the fourth one, which is called the Atma, which is called a pure consciousness. So this body was there earlier also, Arjuna, in different form. The Bhishmacharya, Dronacharyas, the Kauravas, all you see, your cousins, your own brothers, wives, children, me, it's always there. This body used to be there earlier also in the different form. It is now there. It will perish. It will again take another Janma. But then Krishna also brings in another knowledge here by saying that we were there earlier, now and in future. So he is trying to take us to a higher platform of I. So the lower platform of I is referring ourselves to this gross body, the body and the mind. The higher platform of I is what we are referring ourselves to, the Atma. So now what is this higher platform of I, which is called as Atma, which is the pure consciousness? A complete description about Atma we will see in chapter number 13, where Krishna talks about how the creation, he talks about the creation, the Atma, everything. But we need to know something about Atma. Otherwise, this coming verses we will find very difficult to understand. Even the verse number 12 becomes very difficult to understand. Now let us try to understand this Atma in 4 points. Very, very important, we need to understand this. Now, Atma in 4 points. Point number 1 is always present, Nityaha. Atma is Nityaha, which means always present. Now we need to understand a little bit behind this. When we say always present, it doesn't perishes. So how something that can remain without perishing means that which does not have a beginning nor an end, which does not have any shape, substance. So that which has to remain always should not have form, properties and character. So Atma does not have a beginning and nor an end. So it is always present. And the second point, that is Akarta Abhokta. Karta means the doer, and Bhokta is a person who is enjoying the fruits of the action that he has done. So a person becomes a Karta and a Bhokta. Karta when he is into action, and Bhokta when he experiences the outcome of the action. When he experiences the outcome of the action, which means he is the experiencer. So Akarta means which doesn't do any actions. When there are no actions, there is nothing as an outcome or a result. Thereby, there is nothing that to there to experience the outcome. There is nothing there for experiencing. Abhokta. So Atma, which is eternal, is also akarta and abhokta. That is, it doesn't do any action. Because it doesn't do any action, there is no outcome. Because there is no outcome, there is nothing for it to experience also. So it is not an experiencer also. Now, how is this all possible? Let me sum it up. When I sum it up, we will try to understand. Now I'm trying to explain the four expressions of Atma. And the third expression of Atma is, it is Nirviharaha, free from all modifications or changes. Which can be modified, which undergoes changes. If we get into the physics or chemistry, we will understand something called matter. When we say matter, it has got three gunas. One is the form. Any matter has got a specific form, and it also has a specific property and also a characteristic that is exhibited from the property or by the property. For example, if you take water, the form is liquid. The properties of hydrogen and oxygen, and the characters are that of oxygen and hydrogen. And now, don't you think this matter, water, undergoes modification or change? Yes. When you heat the water changes its form from liquid to gas. Now it's become a steam, water vapor in a gaseous form. The property changes, the character also changes. When you cool down the water, now its form changes from a liquid form to a solid form, ice, and similarly now its properties and characters also changes. So only the matter principle can undergo modification or a change. Atma is not a matter principle, thereby it is nirvikaraka. It doesn't undergo any modifications or changes. So Atma is not a matter principle. When it is not a matter principle, it does not have any form, it does not have any properties, it does not exhibit any characters. So that is nirvikaraka. And the fourth one expression is aprameyaha. Ever the subject, never the object. Let us take a very simple thing, water as a subject, ocean as a subject. If you take ocean as a subject, the waves and the form, it becomes the object. But now if you look water, ocean as a water, there is nothing like subject nor object. Why? The ocean is also water, the waves formed by the ocean is also water. So there is nothing like an ocean and a wave. The subject is ocean and the object is wave. But when you look as a water, the ocean is also a water, is the water, the waves are also water, which does not have any subject or object. If you look, let us take another example. A chair which is made of a wood. Now wood is the subject and chair is the object. But if you look them as a wood, the chair is a wood even before it become a chair, and it is also wood after it is made into a chair. Am I right or wrong? As the properties or anything changed? So when you look as a wood, the chair was wood before it become a chair and is a wood when it is a chair. When it gets broken, it still remains as a wood. You understand? I mean, I gave this example for understanding the Atma as a aprameyaha, which means it has nothing to be like. It is what? Atma is always Atma only. A wood is always a wood only. It is a wood in the form when it was a wood. When you made it into a chair also, it remains as wood. When you destroy that also, it remains as wood. When it is broken also, it remains as wood. So there is nothing like a subject and object, just for understanding. But we have to, I want a chair made of wood. I want a wooden chair. So the wood becomes the subject and the chair becomes the object. Similarly, the gold also, you can say, you can give a number of examples like that. So when you make a jewel out of a gold, before that it is a gold, now the subject gold becomes object as a chain or a necklace or a bracelet. But when you see as a gold, the gold was there even before you made the necklace. The gold is there, it is gold in the form of necklace, and when you melt the necklace, it still remains as a gold. So the gold is there in all the three states. Before also it is gold, now as a necklace also it is gold, after melting it also it is gold. So there is nothing like subject and object. So Atma is something like that. So these are the four expressions of Atma. One is Nityaha, eternal, Akarta, Abhokta, right? So there is no action, thereby it doesn't have an opportunity to enjoy any result of action. And Nirvikaraka, free from modifications and changes. And the fourth version is Aprameyaha, which is ever the subject, never the object. Now this Atma is pure consciousness. This is eternal, ever omnipresent, ever prevailing. So Krishna refers to this I as at an higher platform, and he says, Arjuna, it is not that I was not there earlier. Similarly, it is not that you were not there earlier. This Atma is always there and it is going to be there, Krishna, Arjuna. So it's all there for everyone, for the Bhishmacharya, Dronacharya, all you see. So what Krishna wants us to gain knowledge in this verse is that you move away from the lower platform of I to an higher platform of I. Because the problem is when you identify yourself with this body and mind, the gross body and the subtle body, the problem is going to be there. The grief is going to be there. Now when you move from the lower platform of I and when you look at the higher platform of I, which is the Atma, the consciousness, then you are away from this gross body and the subtle body, and thereby there is nothing to grieve at all, because everyone is an Atma, everything is Atma ultimately, which has no death, because it has no birth. Anything that has got a birth, a date of birth, definitely should also have a date of death. And you see the pictures placed in many houses, a dead person's picture frame, it is written as date of birth and date of death. DOB, DOD. So Atma do not have birth or death. So why do we need to grieve? We are grieving because we are standing at the lower platform of I, giving a lot of importance to this gross body and the subtle body. And Krishna says, don't do that. That is why the previous sloga, also in sloga number, verse number 11 also, Krishna said, there is nothing to grieve at all. Nothing deserves grief. So this is what the essence of verse number 12. So we got introduced to a new concept, a new knowledge. I won't say concept, a true knowledge, the truth, which is Atma, which is the pure consciousness. We will try to understand this as we go in the Bhagavad Gita. So now coming to verse number 13, Krishna says, this body has got 4 states of experience. Krishna doesn't say here, but he says in verse number 13, childhood, boyhood or a girlhood, youth and old age. This is verse number 13. Krishna says this body has 4 states of experience. Otherwise, our birth and death is explained in 6 levels. Existence, formation, birth, growth, degeneration and death. You got it? Existence, which means it is already existing. Then the formation, which happens within the womb of the mother, the formation of this life. And then birth, which has actually come out. And after the birth, there is a growth phase. You keep growing up to a particular age. And after that, there is a degeneration process. After the growth, there is a degrowth. And now coming to the final one, the death. That is the 6th state. These are the 6 states understood in a human life cycle. Now this Krishna simplifies into 4 levels for our understanding in verse number 13, the childhood, boyhood or a girlhood, youth and old age. So when we say childhood, there is no gender, and then slowly you move into the gender, boy and a girl, and then you come to the youth, which again loses its gender. It talks about exuberance, that vibrance, energy, action. Okay, so there the gender slowly vanishes, and finally the old age, where again the gender is all become old. And then what happens? Death happens. So these are the 4 experiences of this body. Now, as these 4 experiences of the body is happening, the I is not changing. So what Krishna says in the second line, a person with a discriminatory knowledge will not worry, as he understands that only the body undergoes these changes and not the Atma. So in 2 lines, first line in verse number 13, Krishna explains or mentions the 4 levels of experience for this body, and in the second statement he says that a man with a discriminatory knowledge will not worry for this at all. Why? He understands all these experiences are only for the body, not for the Atma. The I, which is Atma, remains as such. Now in verse number 11, Krishna was referring to Arjuna, a wise man like you will never grieve at all. So what is it wiseness we are talking about? What is it wisdom that we are talking about? What refers to this wiseness or wisdom is, which is mentioned in verse number 13, a person with a discriminatory knowledge. Now the question also, we need to dwell. See, that's the beauty in Bhagavad Gita. We need to go deep into that. So why first of all discrimination is required? Discrimination is required and because there is a mix-up. We discriminate a boy, he is a brilliant student. He is discriminated as a brilliant student. Why? He is with other students who are not as brilliant as he is. So there is something that discriminates this boy from others. That discrimination is absolutely required because there is a mix up of brilliant and non-brilliant students. So when two things which are not similar, which are not same, are mixed up, then a discrimination is absolutely required to understand. In the olden days, I don't know whether it is happening in other parts of the country, in South, I have at least seen in my home, my grandma used to do. After we buy the rice from the shop, my grandma used to sit, take a small portion of the rice from the bag, spread it, and then she picks up the stone, the other things which are present, which are not to be there for cooking. So now there is a discrimination happening. My grandma has got the discriminatory knowledge. What is rice and what is not rice? And that knowledge she required because in rice, what is not rice is also mixed up. So that mix up is also happening in our knowledge. We are mixed up with the truth and with the untruth. Satya, asatya. We have mixed it up. So, as I told you in the beginning, and we let us understand, the knowledge is not truth. Truth has to be the knowledge. So, what is the mix-up that has happened in our life is, in our knowledge is, we think this gross body and the subtle body is always going to be there. That is the truth. Now, how do we understand truth? Truth is always there. That which remains as it is called truth. So today we are also mixing up with the word truth and honesty. They are two different things. When we understand truth, satya, in Sanskrit, I don't know, in English, it may get mixed up. If I use the word in Sanskrit, satya, it means that is constant, that never undergoes any change. It is same wherever it is, at any period, under any condition. So, it remains same. That is called satya. Anything that is going to change, anything that is going to get modified according to the time or condition is called asatya. So anything that is keeping on changing, can we call that as a truth? It can't be a truth, because what I said today is true, tomorrow it has changed. If my boyhood, when I think that's what I am, and that is what I believe as a truth, then you change. When you become a youth, a lot of things have changed, physically, mentally, emotionally. A lot of things have changed. So now I realize the boyhood is not truth, is the truth. Youth is the truth. Then when you attain old age, suddenly you realize that youth is also not truth, because in old age there are so many other changes have happened, physically, mentally, emotionally. So that which keeps on getting modified cannot be called as a truth. So, but what has happened? We are converting our knowledge into truth. That has got mixed up with the truth. So there is a mix-up. Satya and asatya got mixed up. We think this gross body and subtle body is what everything, and that is the truth. And we are giving utmost importance to these two things, and that is why the grief is there, grieving is there, sorrowness is there in our life. That is the one reason why we have this grief and sorrowness. But once we understand the truth, I think now you got the real meaning of truth. Satya, which never undergoes any change or modification in these two factors, primarily time related and condition related. These are the two prime factors through which many things, during which or under which many things change, either time related or condition related. That which never undergoes change in these two factors is called the truth. But the gross body and the subtle body undergoes changes according to the time, according to the condition. Kala avastha. It undergoes change. So it is not true. That got mixed up with the truth, the untruth. What is the untruth? Thinking this as true is untruth. The body, the gross body and the subtle body is asatya, not dependable. Satya is Atma. The knowledge of truth got mixed up with the knowledge of untruth. So you need a discriminatory knowledge, or the knowledge that can discriminate the truth from the untruth. So the person who is having that knowledge is called a wise person, who can discriminate the truth from the untruth. So in verse number 13, Krishna gives two information. One, the four states of experience of the body: childhood, boyhood or girlhood, youth and old age. And the second information is a person with the discriminatory knowledge never worries for this. Why? Because he is very clear these changes or experiences are only for the body, not for Atma. So why does he call it as a discriminatory knowledge? He is able to discriminate the truth from the untruth. So what is truth? Atma is truth. Why we say Atma is truth? Atma is the one that never undergoes any modification or changes during the course of time or in different conditions. Nirvikaraha. But whereas the gross body and subtle body are vikaraha, they undergo change in the course of time or in different conditions. And that's what Lord Krishna says in verse number 13. So discriminatory power is what Krishna refers to as a wise person, and we need this discriminatory power, and that is what we are going to gain from Bhagavad Gita. And so much more to come from in this Bhagavad Gita. As I told you in the beginning, chapter number 2 is a complete essence of the Bhagavad Gita. It's a heavy subject, as we are going to see up till 25th verse. Exemption is 14 and 15. We are going to understand the Atma Tattva, the concept of Atma, which is very, very essential, which is the truth. Once I get this knowledge of truth, I will never grieve for anything. So feeling sorry for something and grieving is something. This knowledge of discrimination is not going to stop you from feeling sorry for things, but you will never grieve for it. That's what we are going to understand in these coming verses onwards. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.